And this is actually one of the common questions I get, which is how do I get whole bunch of parts, a whole bunch of inventory parts I have in QuickBooks Desktop and convert them into non-inventory parts? Let's say, for example, I'm not going to count the inventory. I don't really have the discipline to keep track of those items as inventory. I do want them in the item list. I don't want them to change. I want them to have the same name and description. But next time I'm going to open QuickBooks and create a sales order, an invoice for that item, I want that item to be a non-inventory part, not an inventory part. Now, unfortunately, QuickBooks doesn't have a built-in way for you to convert inventory parts into non-inventory. Like if I try to edit an inventory part, notice that it can only be changed into inventory assembly. So once the item has been created as an inventory part, it cannot be converted anymore. However, to solve this issue, that some of the items in your item list, or maybe all your items, you no longer need them as inventory part and you want them intact the same way they look like in your current item list as a non-inventory part, the workaround is the following. Step one, we're going to go ahead and adjust the current value of the inventory to 0. So we're going to write off the balance of that inventory, make it 0, because we're no longer tracking inventory for them. 2, we're going to inactivate or disable the current list of items that is in there because you can delete them because maybe you've used them in the past and they have some sort of historical transactions that will stop you from being able to delete it. And we're going to append or add a symbol next to the item name. That way, if you see them on reports, you know that they're the old inventory version of the item that now has been converted to a non-inventory part. And then the third thing we're going to do is now we're going to import a brand new list of non-inventory parts containing the exact same information as the old inventory part. I know it sounds crazy. I know it's a lot of moving parts. Let's do the demo and show you exactly how that will work. So the first thing we need to do is we need to identify which of the items you want to make non-inventory. There's multiple ways, multiple approaches to do this. Some people export this into Excel and do it in Excel. That could be done. I have a very specific technique I like to use, especially if I'm collaborating with another user and I'm helping them to the process. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on any item. It doesn't really matter in the item list, any item. Click on custom fields, and I'm crossing my fingers, hoping that not all custom fields are being used at the moment. So we're going to use at least one custom field to add a code next to the item that we want to do this conversion for. So let me click on define fields here, and I'll create a custom field, and I'm going to call this a note, right? So it's just basically a temporary use custom field. I'm going to click on use, and that's it. And then I'll click on OK. So by that, I'll enable a custom field called note, and I'm going to be using that custom field to add a specific note to then let me know what items I'm going to be exporting and importing as a non-inventory part. So I hit OK, and then I hit OK. Manually, you can go into each item that you want to do the conversion for, go into custom field and add a code into it. Let's say the code we're going to use is CX. So you can manually do that and then go find item by item that you want to convert and edit by hand. But that will take forever. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the list menu, and then we're going to go down to add, edit multiple list entries. In here, under where it says list, we're going to switch that over to inventory parts. Okay, that's going to be my entire inventory item list. And then here where it says customize columns, in the top left, we're going to click on that. And then we're going to look for that note custom field that we created. And we're going to add it. We're going to click on add and add it so it's showing up on the screen. By default, it will be added as the very last column. So I'm going to click on move up until it's all the way in the top and it's the very first chosen column. Then I'm going to click OK. And then you're going to notice that is your same item list, just with a note field as the first column. So we've got a good first step here. I'm going to expand this fields here. Actually, I'm just going to minimize this and only have my item name and my description. I'll get rid of everything else that I can, as many things as possible. That way my my list is a little bit easier to navigate. Okay, perfect. So this is my item list with the names, the descriptions, and the field next to it. So then at that point, you would decide or make a list of all the ones that I want to convert because I no longer want to track inventory for them. So I'm going to type CX on the ones that I want to. So I'm just going to copy that and then go down to each of the ones that I want to do the conversion for and type it in there. This is pretty much a very manual process. If you're doing all of them, then you don't have to do this process, right? This is when there's only a specific group that you want to do the conversion for. If you're going to convert your entire item list, then you can skip this specific portion. But let's just assume that there's only a small group of items that I want to do this conversion for. Okay, and you're going to see why it makes sense to use a custom field and why it makes sense to use this process. Okay, so let's say, for example, you went through your entire item list and you marked all the ones that you want to convert over to non-inventory by adding that CX or whatever line of code you want to use that you would probably not use on any other context, right? And then you mark them and then you click on Save Changes. So what that's going to do is now it's going to add in batch that custom field to those items, and then I'll be able to use it as a filter. Okay, so that was the first step. First step is we identify the ones that we want to make non-inventory. Second step is we need to adjust them and make them zero quantity. So we're going to go into the inventory menu and then go to adjust quantity value on hand. And we're going to click here where it says find select items. And we're going to click on where it says in, this is our search field. We're going to go down to custom fields. Okay, it's going to start to make sense now. So I'm going to search for whatever code I typed in there. So I typed CX. Okay, you can use whatever code you want to use. I'm going to go to search, and then notice that automatically it's going to select all the items that I marked with that CX in there. Okay, so it's only going to search within custom fields. If you're using CX in any other context in the custom fields, you need to use a different code that wouldn't inadvertently pick the wrong item. So you're going to search from that list, and then you're going to click on add selected items, and then that's going to load up your entire item list that had that code, that CX code in there. Let's just go back and look at that again. Go to add edit multiple items, and then let's go to inventory parts. I'm going to click here where it says note, so I'll just sort. Okay, so then we got all the ones that don't have the code, and I'm going to scroll down, and then you see all the ones that have the code. So I went in there and I added all the ones that I wanted to do that for. So I'm going to hit on close, and then we're back into our inventory adjustment. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put 0 next to all of these items. So unfortunately, right now there's going to be a lot of just typing. So we're going to put 0 under new quantity and then down arrow, and basically just repeat this. Okay, there's no other way that I know how to do this. Just literally just put 0 down arrow until you go all the way to the bottom. Okay, depending on how many items it is, it could take you a couple of minutes. I know your fingers can get tired. If we're dealing with thousands of items, then obviously this is going to take a lot longer. But I think it was only about 150 items. So look, a minute hasn't even gone by and I'm already down to 100. So don't get lazy thinking that this is not feasible. If there was a way to copy this down or copy and paste a bunch of zeros in there, I would tell you. But I'm literally just typing 0 down arrow until I get to the very bottom. There you go. So now I got all my items here that have been adjusted to 0. Here under where it says total value adjustment, it will tell you the financial effect that would have in your financial statements. Make sure that you understand what you're doing. Make sure you understand what the effect to your profit and loss and to your bottom line it is. Let's just make the assumption that you know what that means. So now we're going to go ahead and make the adjustment, and now all these items will now be a 0 quantity. So I'm going to click on save and close, and then click on save, and that's going to make the inventory adjustment. So let's just check real quick. I'm going to go to reports, then I'm going to go to inventory and click on valuation summary, and there is a whole bunch of items here that have 0. Okay, if I go to customize report on the top left, and then click on filters, and then go to note, and then I type CX, and then click on OK. Now I'm going to get a list of only my inventory items that had the CX marking in the custom field. Now it makes total sense why you want to do it with the custom field, because it allows you to check and double check with your reports later on as you're making these adjustments. Okay, so we got that done. That's perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my add edit multiple list items again, and I'm going to do is I'm going to append a code or a symbol next to each of the items as I make them inactive. Again, I can't delete them, or possibly I can't delete them because they might have been used in other transactions in the past. So that will stop me from being able to delete them. So let me go back to inventory parts here. And here where it says view, notice that there's a custom filter option. I'll click on custom filter, and then we're going to search in the active ones, and then in custom field, and then here's where I type CX. Okay, if you have them inactive as well, then you click on all, and then that would search within active and inactive items. So right now we're just trying to make items inactive, so it doesn't really make sense to search within all, but it doesn't matter anyway. So I'm going to do search, click on go, and that's going to search only my items that are having that custom field for CX. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on customize columns, and I'm going to go where it says active, somewhere here on the left hand side. It will say inactive actually, and I'll bring that with clicking on the add button, and then I'm going to move that all the way up to the very first column and then click on OK. So what that will do is, and now it will add a checkbox where I can make all these inactive in batch. But before doing that, I'm going to change the name of these items. I'm just going to append a code at the end. So first thing I want to do is I want to click where it says item name, and I want to sort or resort the item list. That's actually a really, really important thing. As a matter of fact, one more thing. If there are sub items involved, you actually have to bring in a different column, which is going to be your full item name. Don't ask, that's just how it works. Then I'm going to click on add, and then move this up here. Okay, and then click on OK. And what I really need to do is sort the full item name again, because if there's a sub item, you're going to need to do this. So now I have them sorted, they're alphabetical. So I'm making sure, checking and double checking that this is in an alphabetical order. Then I'm going to go into my item list, and I'm going to click here where it says items and click on resort list. And the reason why I'm doing that is just in case there has been some manual sorting that's going to affect the way the item list shows up in the reports. I actually need to export a report of all the items with a CX marking on it in alphabetical order, so I can copy and paste that name with the appended code next to it. So now we're good to go with that. Then I'm going to go into reports. I'm going to go into list. Then I'm going to go into item listing. Okay, in the item listing, I'm going to click on customize report. I'm going to go into filters. Then I'm going to look for that note and type CX. Okay, so that will filter all my items that have the custom field CX. I'm also going to click on the sort here, and then I'm going to sort by item. And then I'm going to do ascending. So that should be A through Z. So that list that I'm looking at here should match exactly the list that I have in the add edit screen. So my very first one is 1-100. And let's take a look at that here. And let's close that. The very first one here is 1-100. Perfect. And if I look at my very last one, so just double checking that this thing's in order, it's 15454-PSM. And then we'll scroll this all the way down. And that's the same thing. So we're just double checking that our list looks about the same. Then I'm going to click on Excel and click on create new worksheet. And what that's going to do is I'm going to export my report into Excel. So let's open that up. Perfect. There's my Excel. I actually don't need any other columns. All I need is the item name. So I can get rid of all the other stuff. Actually, let me keep description and cost and price. And I'm going to use this to import my non-inventory item list later. So I'm not going to delete the rest of the columns. I'm actually going to keep description, cost, and price, because let's say that's going to be relevant for importing my item list afterwards. However, for this particular case, I'm just going to insert a column between item and description. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a formula that appends a character next to the item name. So I'm going to do equals, and then select the field, and then I'm going to put ampersand, and then I'm going to do quote. I'm going to put hyphen old, end quote. Okay, so that's what the formula looks like, is the field with the item name and then hyphen old. And the reason for that is what I'm going to do is, actually I need to change this column to general. Sometimes QuickBooks exports do that, and then retype the formula and click enter. Okay, perfect. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm creating a new item name that has the original item name and -old next to it. I'm gonna click and drag that all the way down. So basically I have my new item list that's gonna replace the old inventory item list, because I need to keep the items in there, and I need to have them still in the database because of historical transactions. I'm just adding old next to it, so I know that I'm not using them anymore. Now, before I change the item name, one more thing. We want to make sure that we know how long these item names are. So I'm going to do equals len and then select the new item name, okay? And take a look at how long these item names are, because unfortunately, I cannot have anything bigger than 30 characters. So I have to be careful that by appending characters to it, I'm not adding additional ones. So let me just make this into a filter, and then I click on the drop down menu here, and I'm just going to double check that nothing is above 30. So we're good to go. So I actually can delete this len now. I just wanted to double check that I wasn't going over the character count by adding that -old. Some people choose, instead of doing -old, they just add 2 asterisks like that. Okay, you can do that too. That's really up to you. Okay, whichever way you want to do it. If you want to add 2 asterisks or old or whatever, up to you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select the entire item list that's here. Okay, with the new name, and then I'm going to go back into QuickBooks and very carefully, right? I want to make sure that I'm in the Add Edit screen. I want to make sure that I'm under the filter. I want to make sure that this thing has been sorted, because I don't want to replace the item name and screw up the whole naming system. So I'm going to put my cursor over the very first item row. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I can't scroll anymore up. And then I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to click on paste. So that's going to basically retype all the item names with the old item name plus old or the 2 asterisks, and replace the item name with that code. So now I successfully have my old item list still in there with 2 asterisks. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on inactive next to it, because I'm also making it inactive. And then I'm going to right click on the inactive check mark, click on copy down. And when I click on save changes, that's now going to make all my old inventory items a new name and make them inactive at the same time. It's a beautiful thing. So when I go back to my item list, okay, and right now my inactive items are not showing, I can click on where it says include inactive, and then I can see all my inactive items with the 2 asterisks next to it. And if I right click on any of them and click on quick report, I can see if there has been any history with them: sales, purchases, inventory adjustments. So it's basically going to keep whatever history it is. If I open an invoice or a bill that contains that item, you're going to see the item name with the asterisks in it, reminding you that you used what used to be a non-inventory item. So now what we're going to do is we're going to import a new item list of non-inventory items, right? What used to be inventory items, now non-inventory items. I'm going to do it using the same spreadsheet. So I'm going to click on Add Edit Multiple, where it says List. I'm going to click on Non-Inventory Parts. Then I'm going to go back into my spreadsheet. I don't need this name with the asterisks anymore. I can delete that. So now I got item name, description, cost, and price. So let me go into QuickBooks and make sure that I'm here under Non-Inventory Parts. I'm going to click on Unsaved, right? That will only show me in the screen the new ones I'm creating. Then I'm going to click on Customize Columns. And let's go back to see item, description, cost, and price. Now, one thing I'll do is, because you can do 2 types of descriptions in QuickBooks. You can do purchase description and sales description. I'm just going to copy the description and paste it into a blank column. That way I have the sales description, which is this sales description, and then we have the description purchase, right? So we have basically the same description twice. So now I got item, sales description, purchase description, cost, and sales price. So let's do the same thing here. So we have item, and then let's move that down. So we got item, sub item off I can get rid of because I'm not using sub items in this case. Then I have my descriptions, where there's my purchase description. I also need my sales description. So I'm going to move my sales description up next to item, purchase description up next to item. Then I got sales price, where's my cost and cost. Manufacturer's part number I'm not using in this particular list. We're not using it at all. So we can get rid of that. and we're going to put cost just on top of sales price. Is that how it is? Yeah. So cost and sales price. So I got item, sales description, purchase description, cost, sales price. Then I need my income account. I'm going to need my expense account, assuming these are double-sided non-inventory items. And then I would be good to go in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And then I'm going to go back into Excel. And then I can copy these. Copy them. Traditional copy paste. Come up here into Add Edit. Make sure my cursor is in the top left, most left column. Item name. Right click and click on Paste. And now it's going to basically create a brand new item list using the exact same names as I had before, with their descriptions, just like it was before, with the cost, with the sales price. Now, in order for me to be able to import these items, I have to give it an income account name, an expense account name. So I'll just pick an income account, right click and click on copy down. Okay. And then I click on an expense account. So I'm going to pick one of my cost of goods sold accounts, right click and copy that down. So now I have my non-inventory item list with all the data from the old inventory list, and then I added the new accounts that I want to use when I use them in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Save Changes. Perfect. So now when I go into my item list, I'm going to have inventory parts and non-inventory parts. Let me uncheck inactive, so I only see the active ones. So I got my list of inventory parts and then my list of non-inventory parts. So if you are a salesperson that is accustomed to selling a particular item, now when you go into your item list, they're still going to be there. They're going to be grouped between item, inventory and non-inventory. But let's say, for example, you're used to just typing the characters in there. So 1-100, it says non-inventory. It doesn't affect anyone. The information is still there. The description is still there. The salesperson can still type it. The sales price still shows up. Basically, you made a seamless change from inventory to non-inventory, making the adjustment and changing the name of the old items. So the new items have the exact same name as before. So that's pretty much how you do the actual conversion from inventory items to non-inventory items. Now let's talk about making some adjustments.